Hi everyone, this is Prashad Parthiban. Today I'm going to talk about flood insurance. First, let's see what is meant by flood. Flood is nothing but a natural rise of water that results in damage to your property. For an example, if you have a home and there is a nearby river and due to a storm or hurricane, the water overflowed and enters your home. This is called as flood. Now you need required coverage to safeguard yourself from this flood. That is why we rely on flood insurance. Now, as I told you, by definition it's nothing but natural rise of water. So somebody thinks that if I have a home and if the pipe breaks down and the water spreads across the home or company, then I can use flood insurance. No. Flood insurance will cover only due to the natural rise of water. In those scenarios where your sump pump or pipe breaks up and it results in the overflow of water, then you cannot get your flood insurance coverage. So you have to be very clear on what is included in flood insurance versus what is not included in flood insurance. Now, typically what happens is, based on my experience, a lot of people think if I have a homeowner's policy or a commercial property policy, I am taken care of even flood coverage. No. If you very closely watch your policies, they will exclude by default the flood coverage because it's more of catastrophic loss. When you say catastrophic, it results in higher damage. So it's very important. You need to review your homeowner's policy or a commercial property policy to make sure that you have flood coverage. If you don't have flood coverage, you need to get a separate flood insurance. Typically the policy wise, the structure wise, it will be the same. Maybe it can cover building, business, personal property or loss of use, but the cause of loss will not cover flood in typical homeowners or commercial property policy. Third point is, most of the time, like in the last 60-70 years, this flood insurance has always been given by the government agencies. And when I say government agencies, National Flood Insurance Program, which has been created by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. So the government has been administrating this flood insurance so that you get required coverage. Typically the coverage will be 250,000 for your building and 100,000 for your property. So the way it works is, government will be the one who will be a primary insurer, and there will be some private insurance companies which will be a kind of front-end administrators who will help the government agency to get the policies. Now, as I told you, typical to any policies, right? If you take homeowners policy, you look at the building structure, how old the building is, what is the construction type, or if there are any prior losses, etc., to determine the premium. In case of flood insurance, the primary factors to determine the premium are flood zones. So you have to go to the FEMA website, and they will, when you enter the address for which you need to get a flood insurance, it will categorize the overall communities across USA to different zones like high flood zone, moderate flood zone, and then the low flood zone. Based on that, your premium could differ. If you see here, there are a lot of flood zones like A, B, C, X shaded, unshaded, D, V. Basically what happens is, like if you are in A or B, you are at high flood zone, which means, say if you have an insurance and you have a mortgage holder, you are required to take a flood insurance. If you are in B or X shaded, that means you are in moderate zone. And if you are in C or X unshaded, then you are in low flood zone. If you are a D, for some reason FEMA have not evaluated those properties for this flood zone. So again, I'm not going into detail of what each kind of things are going to describe, but in general, as I told you, flood zones are categorized as high, medium, low, and which will help the insurance companies to determine the premium appropriately. Now, NFIP versus private insurance. As I told you, last 60-70 years it was monopoly where like the government agencies have been giving the insurance to the customers. In the recent times, even private insurance have entered the market, right, to give flood insurance. So it's very important for you as a customer to know the difference between NFIP insurance, which is a government-based insurance, versus private insurance. So a couple of examples are like if you want a flood insurance for your existing property, when you go to NFIP, which is a government agency, you need to wait for 30 days. The waiting period is 30 days. It's not that you go today and you want a policy and the policy cannot be effective tomorrow. The policy will be effective only after 30 days. The reason for this is, in the recent past, where when the customers know that they are going to have flood in the next 2 days or 3 days, they got a policy and they got a coverage which resulted in a lot of loss to the NFIP. So they have this waiting period of 30 days. Whereas private insurers, they have only 7 days to 14 days. Similarly, the typical coverage for NFIP is the building is 250k and the property is 100k. That's standard. Whereas private insurance can have more than that, like 1 million or 800k, because of their flexibility in coverage. Third thing is, most of the time the NFIP gives coverage for building and personal property. They don't typically cover loss of use, whereas private insurance can even cover loss of use. So there are differences go on, but you have to understand that nowadays there are two ways you can get insurance, one from NFIP and one from private insurer. Sometimes what could happen is, if you have a mortgage holder who is more of government based, they don't allow private insurance coverages. That time you don't have an option, you need to go to NFIP. And if you have an option, you have to difference, or you have to understand the differences accordingly. Say one of the drawbacks of private insurance is the deductibles are higher. Like if you want to go with a private insurer, because of the fact they don't want claims for smaller amounts, they have deductibles like $5,000, $6,000, whereas NFIP has lesser deductibles like $1,000, $2,000, etc. So this is what I wanted to cover at a high level. What is flood insurance? As I told you, a quick recap. It is basically for natural rise of water. And when it comes to flood insurance, typically NFIP is the one who kind of does this flood insurance with the help of FEMA. In the recent times, even private insurance have entered the market. And the way we kind of calculate the premium for flood insurance is based on the flood zones and other factors too, even the construction type, etc., gets into the role. But the typical factors are flood zones. So I hope you like my training videos. If you like my training videos, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a great day. Bye-bye.